Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Planning Committee. My name is Penny Rivers and I chair this committee and will be chairing this evening. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. And please can I ask that any questions are kept brief and to the point. And may I remind ward councillors to sit separately from the committee while applications in their ward are being considered and voted on by us. So we come to our agenda item number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have apologies for absence from councillors Rabini and Keane. We also have had Councillor Jane Austin has now resigned from the committee, and Councillor Hosseini will be replacing her once he has completed his training. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that training done before the meeting today, so Councillor Michael Goodridge is here as a substitution as he has completed training. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Agenda item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Are you satisfied that those are correct? Agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest, Kim.
None received prior to the meeting.
Councillor Morrison.
Declaration of interest in respect of Claire of the Cranley Leisure Centre. I'm a member of the Cranley Leisure Centre.
Thank you. And you'll be sitting at the back, further back. Agenda item 4, questions by members of the public, and there are none. And we have one question from members with Claire to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. So the 2 questions asked from Councillor Beamham. The first one was it was requesting that all application reports include reference to SIL, and I've confirmed that in the future all reports, both delegated and committee reports, will make reference to SIL. The second request from Councillor Beamham was that all decision letters, whether it's an approval or a refusal, includes a statement as to whether the application is liable for SIL, and I've confirmed that we currently do put that information on the bottom of all decision notices under the informative section.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since we last met? Is there any?
No, there are no further no updates for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. So we come to our planning applications, the first of which is WA 2024-02091. And this is for Cranley Leisure Centre, an application under Regulation 3 for the erection of a leisure centre with access, parking, EV charging points, lighting, solar panels, landscaping and associated works after the demolition of the existing leisure centre and for temporary use of the tennis courts during the construction. Just a gentle reminder to us all that this planning application is here for us tonight to determine on its planning grounds and not on who the applicant is. Sam, over to you. Councillor White.
Chair, could we please have the lights off in the centre? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The first application under consideration at committee is WA 2024-02091 for the replacement of Cranley Leisure Centre. The permission sought includes erection of a new leisure centre, demolition of the existing centre, as well as changes to parking arrangements and landscaping, permissions also includes a temporary use of the tennis courts area during construction. So in terms of the application site, it measures 1.62 hectares. Cranley Leisure Centre is a 1960s built leisure centre accessed off Cranley High Street down Village Way. The leisure centre, skate park and tennis courts are located to the south of the site, with 334 parking spaces to the north. In terms of planning constraints, the site is in the developed settlement of Cranley in the town centre area. Land to the south is Snoxhall Fields, which is designated area of strategic visual importance. The land is separated by Littlemead Brook, which part of the site sat within flood zone 2 and 3. The site sits adjacent to the central shopping area, the Cranley Conservation Area, and an area of high archaeological potential, all of which run along the north of the site. Public footpath 378 runs along the eastern side of the site. And so this slide sort of shows site context. Outside the red line boundary to the west, you have a number of community buildings, including the band room, the Scouts building, and Cranley Parish Council building. To the east is residential with a number of two-storey properties backing onto the site from Charts Close and Little Manor Gardens. To the north is the Cranley Medical Centre with other commercial buildings heading onto the High Street. Again, you can see the existing arrangement. The area of the car park hatched in red currently hosts the Cranley Thursday Market. And so we have some photos of the existing site. This is the north of the site with the car park. So the top left is looking south from Village Way towards the leisure centre. The top right is looking northeast towards the Cranley Medical Centre. And the bottom picture is looking southwest from the car park towards the existing centre. These are some photos of the leisure centre, views of the entrance, northern elevation and western and eastern elevations. And then to the south of the site, showing the southern elevation of the leisure centre with the tennis courts as well as the skate park. So in developing the proposals, the leisure team have extensively consulted with the local community and provided a statement of community involvement. Through this engagement, as well as pre-application discussions, the designers developed and taken inspiration from the character of the area, including the predominant two-floor differentiation evident around Cranley, notably in the High Street area, a range of materials evident. And we can see this brought through into the design of the proposed leisure centre. You can hopefully see the 3D model to the bottom left of the screen. On the base would be timber elevations with curtain wall glazing. And on the first floor, this would be a terracotta stone effect material that wraps around the building. These are full elevations at west, south, east and north. The proposed leisure centre, alike existing, is part two-storey, part single-storey. The single-storey outlet to the south hosts the swimming pool areas. The eastern elevation with mind of the residential properties to the side does not include any glazing on the first floor, although it does have glazing on the ground floor, serving the health studio, corridors and stairwell to ensure an active frontage for footpath users. The western elevation includes more fenestration detail signalling its role as the main entrance. And so you have some illustrative plans, the top plan of the western entrance with associated landscaping. You can see the shingle effect above the ground floor with said materials to provide this differentiation between the first floor and the base. To create a feature point around the pool hall, the lower mass of the building is capped with metallic panels, as you can see in the bottom plans. So this is the aerial illustrative view, the idea of the scale of the building, its height in relation to the Cranley Medical Centre, which is to the rear of the plan. There's also some internal views of the learner and main pool. In terms of landscaping, there would be a significantly enhanced public piazza to the west beside the main entrance, as well as widened footpaths on the west and east and new car parks to the north and south of the building. The strategy includes significant replanting proposed with 30 individual trees and 4 hedges recommended for planting, which would provide a better green transition to the south of the site onto Snoxhall Fields. And you can see through the proposed site plan how this would look. The car parks proposed total 299 parking spaces, which include disabled parking bays, minibus bays and bays for parents and children. We've worked with County Highways to amend parts of the strategy to include further widened footpaths, raised tables on crossing points and enhanced EV charging and cycling infrastructure to ensure the development promotes sustainable modes of transport. So in terms of the main matters for consideration, there's no outstanding objection from any statutory consultee subject to conditions. As detailed in the report, the provision of enhanced leisure facilities would be of benefit to the town centre area. The Cranley Market has been relocated with agreement from market stall operators to Stockland Square car park, keeping the market's presence within the Cranley town centre area, which was important. The proposed construction programme to build first and then demolish existing after ensures there be no loss of key leisure facilities during the build. Sports England, in dialogue with Swim England and the Lawn Tennis Association, support the development, and the proposal would be compliant with policy LRC1 of the local plan part 1. Daylight surveys with 3D modelling and noise impact assessments are being carried out that detail no material harm to residential amenity of properties along Charts Close or Little Manor Gardens. County Highways have reviewed all trip survey data and the methodology chosen and have no objection, are satisfied that access deliveries, parking during and post-build and sustainable transport has been suitably considered. They've reviewed all scenarios, including displaced parking provision during the build, including on Thursday market days with the Stockland Square car park, and considered provision would still be sufficient to cope with peak demand. The LLFA and Environment Agency do not object on matters of flood risk, subject to conditions on sustainable drainage and ensuring temporary porta cabins within the construction area are raised. Furthermore, the current building is highly inefficient, contributing approximately 47% of all emissions from Waverley's leisure portfolio. The passive house design, which sees a 60 to 70% reduction of emissions over a standard build leisure centre, would be a marked improvement on the site, as would the significant landscaping proposals. Therefore, with all these points considered, officers are recommending approval of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. We have 4 speakers in total, and the first is Mr. Redding. You have 4 minutes from when you start speaking, Mr. Redding. Ah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Surrey County Council's 2020 climate change strategy has strategic priorities number 1 and 2 as to reduce car journeys and car traffic by investing in infrastructure to increase the uptake of active travel and public transport. This development does the opposite. It will increase the car infrastructure land use by some 35%, and the number of parking spaces is also to increase by 30%. Logically, therefore, it would seem that we are planning for this project to increase car traffic by at least 30%. Local residents in Little Manor Gardens have expressed concern with the expected increase in noise pollution, as well as loss of light and loss of privacy. These residents have expressed support for the new leisure centre overall, but would like to see the development built on the existing site location. When the Thursday market is present, we reduce the car park by 1/3 and see increased foot traffic and increased tax revenues without any parking issues. Logically, if more parking spaces equals more sales on the high street, then we should stop the Thursday market altogether. However, as the Thursday market proves that reducing parking capacity is a healthy decision for the town, we should reject the proposed car park expansion plan and replace the proposed Maple car park with a pedestrianised community plaza. The proposed plans to expand the car park also mean tearing up and tarmacking the green barrier to the outdoor gym, the immensely popular Snoxhall Fields, and it also entirely removes the skate park. This will mean that these areas become subject to greater noise pollution, air quality pollution, and will suffer the urban heat island effect. In essence, we are increasing the land use for cars by taking away land use from both active travel routes and active travel destinations. Obviously, this will increase car traffic. Waverley's Carbon Neutral Action Plan 2022 has key priority number 2 as to reduce car traffic by investing into active transport and greenway networks. If Waverley's own action plan is to be followed for this development, then it is a requirement that the greenway behind the leisure centre is included in these plans. Is it any surprise that Surrey has a massive pothole and congestion problem when we continue to subsidise 2-ton EVs whilst neglecting active travel infrastructure? Whilst EVs are marginally better than ICE vehicles in terms of carbon emissions, their local environmental impact remains tenfold greater than that of active travel or public transport. This is due to their ever-increasing size, weight, and enormous land use requirements for which the proposed plan serve as direct evidence. In summary, the transport design for this development contravenes Surrey County Council's climate change strategy, Waverley's carbon neutral action plan, Surrey's local transport plan LTP4, Waverley's local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, as well as the Department of Transport's guidance for local authorities. In the Cranley Neighbourhood Plan, as passed by referendum in March 2024, the strategic objectives include, and I quote, development should reflect and reinforce the character and quality of Cranley. This is a bland, modernist building that does not at all resemble the character of Cranley. It is entirely generic, a nowhere building that does not have a sense of place or cultural identity. All modernist buildings age and uglify at an alarming rate, as was the case with the existing leisure centre. In comparison, the adjacent Cranley Village Hall built in 1933, that was built beautifully in a recognisably local architectural style. It is still here to this day, nearly 100 years later, because instead of tearing it down and building a new one for £30 million, we were able to fully refurbish it for only £300,000. It was built to last, and it was worth saving. It is fiscally irresponsible and short-sighted to build another ugly modernist building that we will plan to tear down again in the near future. We have the money and the opportunity to build something beautiful and historic, but do we have the courage? Surrey has a rich history of architecturally significant neoclassical, Georgian and Regency buildings, which GT3 could use for inspiration. On behalf of all concerned residents, I urge the Planning Committee to reject these plans so that they can be redrafted using new urbanism principles where the leisure centre is built in a distinctly Surrey architectural style in accordance with local transport and climate change plans. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Redding. Our next speaker is Lee Fulcher, who's online. So Lee, you have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Thanks. Good evening. Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Fulcher. I'm the Principal Planner at DPP, speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of this application for the redevelopment of Cranley Leisure Centre. The existing leisure centre was built in 1969 and despite several refurbishments is no longer fit for purpose. The redevelopment of this centre will safeguard leisure provision for the community of Cranley, ensuring that residents continue to have access to high quality sports and fitness facilities. The new leisure centre will be located to the northeast of the current building, positioned centrally within the site as a whole. This placement ensures that the existing leisure centre can remain operational throughout the construction process, preventing any disruption to the large number of residents who rely and utilise on these facilities daily. The building's appearance will be of high quality and has been carefully considered to ensure that it complements the surrounding area. The ground floor will be clad in timber and the first floor will have a stone effect panel that picks up on both the red brick and earthy tones of Cranley High Street. The focus within the design and the architectural style has been on longevity and sustainability, ensuring that the building remains an attractive and functional part of the community for decades to come. The new centre will bring significant benefits to Cranley, particularly in terms of health and well-being, with so many people relying on these facilities every day. Modern and improved fitness and leisure services will encourage even more people to stay active and improve their overall quality of life. Additionally, the development will support the local economy, creating jobs and increasing footfall in the village centre. The development also incorporates a strong sustainability focus, as Sam mentioned, with a design which meets Passive House standards, which would offer a 60 to 70% reduction in carbon emissions against the standard new build leisure centre. This results in reduced operational costs and lower energy consumption when not only compared to the existing centre, but to new leisure centres being built across the country today. Furthermore, the scheme will provide a financial contribution to enhance the walking and cycling link between the site and the Downs Link bridleway to the south, which will be secured through a unilateral undertaking. As requested by Surrey Highways, this will improve connectivity and promote sustainable travel options to and from the site, not relying on vehicles. We acknowledge the concerns by local residents, which included daylight and sunlight impacts and the potential loss of views. A daylight and sunlight assessment has been undertaken to ensure that the new building has been carefully designed to minimise any impact on neighbouring properties. Other concerns in relation to the loss of village centre parking, traffic, construction impacts, and the market relocation have been addressed throughout the pre-application, public consultation and consultation processes. The uplifting trips to and from the site is considered to be minor and acceptable by Surrey Highways, whilst they've also accepted the overall minor loss of car parking spaces on the site and the temporary parking arrangement, which will still provide a total of 467 village centre parking spaces across the site and in combination with Stockman Square. The mix of parking provision, including car and cycle spaces, has been carefully considered to provide an appropriate balance with sustainable transport in mind. In relation to the market, conversations with the operators are ongoing in terms of the long-term relocation, but in the short to mid-term, the market has agreed to temporarily relocate the Stockman Square car park at the western side of Cranley High Street. Based on this, it's clear that the applicant is actively engaged with the community and key stakeholders to refine the design and mitigate against any potential issues with the scheme. We'd also like to highlight the level of public support for this application. We've received 165 comments in favour of the development, demonstrating the community's recognition of the long-term benefits that this facility will bring.
Could you wrap up, please?
What was that, sorry?
Could you start wrapping up your speech, because you
I
have
will
4
do.
minutes?
Yeah, thank you. The proposed leisure centre is a much needed development that will secure modern, high quality fitness and wellbeing facilities for the community. Development will replace an outdated building which no longer meets the needs of the community and creates a sustainable and energy efficient leisure centre that will support health, wellbeing and the local economic growth for many years to come. The application aligns fully with the local and national planning policies, and we politely encourage the committee to support this proposal. Thank you for your time. Sorry for running over.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Austin. You too have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I proudly disclose I have a personal interest. 2 of my children attend Cranley Swim Club, so I'm at the leisure centre 5 days a week, sometimes twice. The swim club trains 90 local children up to age 16. Cranley Pool itself was fundraised and built by Cranley residents following the tragic drowning of 2 local children at a nearby quarry. And since then, for over 50 years, the pool and the club have fostered swimming and talent locally. Right now, the club has national, regional and county level swimmers right here, and it's just fantastic. The club is a main user of the pool for around 40 hours a week. So last year, that was over 2,000 hours. We all agree Cranley needs a new leisure centre, but although demonstrating excellent environmental credentials, there are concerns, ongoing concerns, the design is not meeting the needs of the current main users. Since Everyone Active took over, the swim club's pool rental has gone up nearly 40% in 2 years. Galas are the main source of income for swimming clubs and keep membership affordable. Cranley holds numerous galas because of the current spectator seating, which in real life does seat up to 180 spectators. The club have counted the numbers of attendees, and I've been there. The Interschool Gala is a high point of the Cranley year. It's absolutely packed. 55 proposed seats will replace this current seating. You will have seen an update sheet on the proposed spectator seating today, which I'm afraid is misleading. The additional suggested poolside seating flagged as yellow on the plan for 70 temporary seats does not solve this the seating issue, because for child safeguarding reasons, only swimmers are allowed poolside. We've requested and seen no evidence of how this could be overcome. Let's look at the alternatives for our club. Godalming Leisure Centre cannot hold galas because of the lack of spectator seating. So they run galas with Farnham and Hazelmere clubs, and they run the galas at Hazelmere, which is a 45-minute drive away, not very environmentally friendly. Those club chairs have confirmed they cannot further split the income, including Cranley, and there is no scheduling space for Cranley to hold events. Surrey Sports Park and Guildford Spectrum are at capacity and cannot offer Cranley gala space. So they are left stuck. Swim England have stated they support this application, so we checked directly with them on what basis they were consulted. There are three things to note. One, Cranley is designated as a community pool, not competitive, and so Swim England responded with a generic statement in line with the specification norms for a community pool. And I quote, Swim England would not normally object where there is an ageing pool. That's the second reason. And three, Swim England state it is the additional cost of spectator seating that results in them often being unsuccessful in obtaining changes to include further seating. So in summary, the support from Swim England is generic. They have not considered the specifics of this pool or the area, and they have not been consulted on the specific issues relating to Cranley Swim Club. The club have repeatedly raised concerns about the diminished seating layout with the centre manager and with Waverley. They're frustrated and they feel they've not been heard. Because at the heart of this, they are passionate about the children, about local swimming, competitive swimming, and they feel this will be diminished. The consequences of the loss of this seating puts the future of the club in doubt and will diminish the offer for local sport. Please review the seating. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The current building has a huge energy and maintenance costs. Currently, the swimming pool is closed for 10 weeks while repairs are carried out. This has been, unfortunately, typical of what has happened over the last few years. The building is getting very old. Building to Passive House standard will reduce the energy cost dramatically. Passive House is a much higher building standard, therefore the expected economic lifespan of the building is much greater than a traditional build. Cranley has an expanding population, therefore a bigger centre will generate more footfall and therefore more revenue. While the new facility has huge support, there are concerns, and I will try to address some of those in the remaining few minutes. It's been suggested that we refurbish the existing centre. This clearly is a non-starter. It is simply too small for the size of the current population. In addition, we would never achieve the energy receivings that are guaranteed with a Passive House design. Building on the current site after demolition of the current facility, this would add costs as we have lost income as well as lost members who may not return. There would be impact on the swimming clubs and the rehab classes that are run, potential impact on swimming lessons for the school pupils. Parking, yes, parking was going to be an issue. There will be reduced parking while the construction is taking place, and this will, to a certain extent, depend on the successful bid of the construction having a management plan. There is additional parking in Snoxhill, and discussions are underway about possible other parking areas. I encourage residents to use the excellent and underused Surrey Connect minibus service, which is free, particularly in my case, if you've got a bus pass. Waverley is investing heavily in this project, but it must be economic and pay its way. Regretfully, there will not be a sauna, there will not be a squash court. Waverley are providing facilities that are in demand by residents. Consequently, there will be a bigger gym, more studios for classes such as spinning and yoga, and improved swimming facilities. There are 2 swim clubs that use the pool. We have an extensive request from one club, but quoting from an email of October 2024, where it says, I confirm that the following accommodation allowance has been made specifically for the swim club. Pool length slightly longer to accommodate timing system to ensure that a 25-meter length with timing pads in situ, installation of fixings and electrical works for starting blocks, timing pads and scoreboard, provision of new starting blocks, addition of bench seating along the entire length of the main pool and teaching pools. It is also mentioned other facilities available, such as the larger, deeper teaching pool with movable floor that can accommodate training and warm-up sessions. As has already been mentioned, Sport England, each borough is meant to have one competition pool. Hazelmere is the borough's competition pool, as it 8 lanes and lots of spectators viewing. Cranley is a community pool. It is not a competition pool. The swim club runs 3 or 4 galas a year in order to raise funds, as Councillor Austin has already mentioned. They have requested additional changes, such as rake seating, which would require considerable modification to the current design. With that comes huge expense. We simply do not have the budget for it. It would impact the financial viability of the entire project, would take up additional car parking space, and will compromise the passive house design, thereby ruining our efforts to reduce energy costs. I do appreciate this will be disappointing, but it's a balance between what can be provided within the budget we have. Nearby residents are also concerned, particularly in Charles Close and Little Manor Gardens. The design ensures that no windows from the leisure centre will look directly onto the residential properties. Studies have been undertaken to ensure the new centre does not take away residents' quality of light. To improve the outlook of residents, there are conditions proposed regarding comprehensive landscaping, which improve the outlook for residents. In addition, we will have car parking lighting in place once the landscape is introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Members, over to you. Councillor Coburn.
I just ask the very obvious question about this seating for the pool. We've just heard that it's not possible, it would be far too expensive. Is it really not possible to get more seating around this pool to, you know, so that it could be used for gala? Just a simple question.
What we set out in the update sheet, that's what we recognise. The leisure team have said that it can be provided. In any event, the whole issue about spectator seating, I mean, this is all internal fittings. We're talking about diving blocks. We're talking about the timing boards. This is managed. It's an operational decision for both the operator and the club to agree. It's not something really in a planning decision. But yeah, as we say, Swim England are supportive of the development. They've reviewed it. And the spectator seating is acceptable in that regard.
Please carry on.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, I do hope, Madam Chairman, that all planning applications are determined on planning matters, not just this one. I mean, what are we doing here if not? Yes, I mean, we've talked about this for so long. We've had, you know, subcommittees and working groups and goodness knows what. And I know people have been working with the community, and we are never going to get anything that suits every person. But I have to say, when I read it, you know, without understanding one or two perhaps of the details for the inside, which we never deal with anyway usually, so it's up to somebody else later on. You know, I just think it's been. I don't like the design. I have to be absolutely upfront, but I mean, I'm not going to turn it down because I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would think it's a good design, but that's just personal. I understand the passive house nature of it, but in terms of design, I could take it or leave it. And in fact, I would rather it were different. But compared to what we've got there at the moment, I mean, it's certainly an improvement. So. You know, having read all the report and listening to everybody this evening, I think in planning terms, I can't see any reason not to go along with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Gale.
Well, first of all, I'm pleased to see that Cranley are going to get a new leisure centre, because I think currently there are lots of problems there and people are having to travel a long way to find a swimming pool. It's a shame that we can't determine what's inside, but I think that does come under a different regulation to what we're looking at tonight. In planning terms, we're looking at the building and, you know, how it impacts the surrounding area. Obviously, passive house is something which everybody's trying to work towards. This can only be good, although like Councillor Coburn, I don't like the look of it, but then we can't really build a Victorian building that's going to house a swimming pool and a spin class. So I think we've got what's being put in front of us, and it will be a leisure centre. And I think Cranley desperately does need a leisure centre. What they do inside, I think, does need some consideration, and maybe we could put that forward to whoever is designing the inside, that they need to look at the requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Sam. Reading the papers, I read there were some concerns about viewing from outside the building into the pool area. And I noted also that some vegetation is going to be planted there to provide some screening. And obviously that vegetation will take some time to provide screening, and I'm just wondering if there is anything to your knowledge that can be used in the meantime.
So, I mean, in planning terms, we have identified there's no material harm to residential amenity of neighbours on Charts Close and Little Manor Gardens. We've gone through the daylight surveys, the 3D modelling, the contours, and there is no material harm. So in essence, we don't need to mitigate it, although the applicant has obviously mentioned about tree planting. And we do have that in condition 18 about...
Sam, sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
I was talking about security of people swimming in the pool, particularly children, and the opportunity for someone to be looking inside towards children swimming in the pool.
So, I mean, in terms of, you've obviously got this southern car park, there's the learner pool. If you see my cursor, that would be the learner pool there, and then the main swimming pool across here. This is an existing footpath on this side of the site. I mean, we have gone through the whole process of secure by design. There would also be there would be surveillance that would come with the CCTV that would come with the application. Lighting has been condition 21 across the site, adequate lighting of all footpaths and cycle paths. So we think the development would be safe, secure for all public users. Hopefully that addresses your comment.
I think just to sort of add, there will clearly be some views into the swimming pool, as there are in most leisure centres that I can think of that I visit. So, for example, in Godalming, if you go into the leisure centre there, into the foyer, you can see clearly into the pool through the glass windows. So that there will be some views. In planning terms, we don't feel that this is prejudicial in any way or unacceptable for any safeguarding reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, quite clearly, Cranley needs and deserves a new leisure centre. The old one is clearly no longer fit for purpose, and any adaptation of it would get nowhere, and it needs to be pulled down quite clearly. And having looked at the detailed report, there's very little planning reasons, as I can see, for not going with the officer's recommendation. Two questions or comments, however. I mean, we've talked about the swimming club, and of course, I've seen their letter of objection dated the 3rd of March. And although it's not a planning issue, so far as I'm aware, so far as the overall leisure centre is concerned, I just hope that the applicant, I appreciate that's us, but the Waverley, but I would hope that the applicant would digest that letter and see what could be done, maybe to come up with some amendments if it affects the outside, to cater for that. Because if we lose the swimming club in Cranley because it cannot operate in the way it needs to operate, not only will there be a lot of young children who will lose the benefit of being a member of that club, but also the centre will lose a fairly significant chunk of income, which they're getting at the moment, which I think was over £20,000. is paid to Waverley by the swimming club for using it. So I would just hope that the applicant will take note of that swimming club letter and see what can be done to ensure that the young people in Cranley and surrounds can deal with it. The other matter which I raise as a question concerns the parking when the leisure centre is being built. It has been suggested that the paddock would be a good place to put the extra parking. Now, I know that Cranley Parish Council have, I think, sold that land now to a third party, but I just inquire whether that has been considered and whether any approach has been made to the owners of the paddock to see if that would be a good place to have extra parking if that is required. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Just in terms of the extra parking, certainly the planning officers aren't able to confirm whether or not there have been conversations about purchasing that land.
Thank you. And just say your other comments are noted. Councillor White and then Councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to show a little bit of empathy for the complainant. I think, obviously, reading the notes that we have, it would seem crazy that, in fact impossible, that the citizens of Cranley would be without leisure facilities for, I don't know what the programme is, but I would say at least 2-year programme. So unfortunately, there really isn't any other way around this. And I think, you know, all reasonable steps, I'm sure, will be taken to mitigate the impact of the relocation of the site. But as I say, I do empathise with it, but it really, in this situation, or a community situation, it's difficult to see any difference. The other thing I want to say, I don't know if the architects are present, are they, this evening with us? And I know this is not an architectural approval session, but I will pick up on, I do want to just add my weight to the seating, if we could feed that back, that does seem to be very important that that is pushed through, that the club has adequate seating for what they want to do, because we've got a brand new facility here, a really good opportunity to highlight the the skills of our swimmers, and it would just be so ridiculous if there's a reduction of 50 seats and they couldn't hold a decent session. So I'd like to reinforce that, please. And the only other comment I would make with regard to Councillor Clark's point on the possible viewing into the children's area, I mean, being the passive house construction that it is, I would think that the designers would be doing everything to restrict heat gain into the building. And my immediate throwaway comment would be tinted windows to the outside, which would mean one-way glass. You could still look in from outside, but tinted windows, again, I know that's not what we're here for tonight, but if those could be passed back to the architect, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody of your opening statement, Madam Chair, and that is that we are here tonight to consider the application on planning grounds, not on other issues. We're not here to decide whether it does or doesn't include everything we would like. That's for somewhere else. So my view is I certainly support the proposal. Unlike Councillor Coburn, I do like the design, but that's a personal thing. My recommendation and what I will be doing is I will be supporting the application, but I agree with others that it may well be that the applicants could go away and consider some of the comments made and possibly come back later with an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No. So I'll read the recommendation that delegated authority is granted to the Assistant Director of Planning to grant planning permission subject to conditions and completion of a unilateral undertaking between the County Council and the applicant to secure a financial contribution for improvements to the walking and cycling route between the site and the Downslink Bridleway, that Reg 3 permission is granted. All those who support that, please show. Please vote.
Did you not put your card in? Which way are you voting, councillor Weldon? Thank you, Madam Chair. So that's unanimous.
Thank you. That is unanimous, therefore carried. So our second application is WA 2024-00583, land centred at coordinates 494653, 136075 Prestwick Lane in Chiddingfold. This is for the erection of 6 dwellings and associated works, including vehicular access onto Coombe Lane. Russell. Thank you, Sam.
Evening, members. So this is an application for 6 affordable homes. Okay, sorry about that. Got feedback. Okay, this is an application for 6 affordable homes on an allocated site in the Chiddingfold neighbourhood plan. The site is to the northwest of Chiddingfold on the road up to Wormley to the west side of Coombe Lane. To the north of the site, Prestwick Lane runs southwestwards towards Grays Wood. As you can see, the site was previously wooded with ash trees that were required to be felled due to having ash dieback to prevent its spread and also to facilitate the treatment of Japanese knotweed, which is a non-native species that is a fence to cause to grow in the wild. Both of these are legal requirements, so the site has now been cleared. In terms of the nearest residential properties to the site, it is to the south of Clover Cottage, to the west of Hatchbolt and Coombe Hatch, which is a Grade 2 listed building, and east of Latchwood Cottage and Primrose Cottage. Land levels on the site rise from east to west, but markedly drop from north to south, where Bridleway 248 runs between Coombe Lane and Prestwick Lane. So this is a proposed site plan. As originally stated, it's for 6 dwellings within 4 buildings. The 2 semi-detached pairs would accommodate the 2 bedroom houses with a proposed occupancy of 4 people, and the 2 detached properties are 3 bedroom with 5 person, well, up to 5 person occupancy. There is a private garden for each dwelling, as well as 2 car parking spaces each, plus a visitor space and cycle storage. The proposed dwellings would be located around the central access road with new vehicular access from Coombe Lane. Spaces provided for turning as well as refuse and recycling bins. Moving on to the elevations, all the buildings on the site would be 2 stories high with a maximum ridge height of 9.6, with eaves being approximately 5 metres high. They would all feature pitch roofs, gables, supported open porches, casement windows and towel hanging to the first floor. The only variations to plots 4 and 5 here is that they would feature barn ends to the front and rear elevations, and plots 3 and 6 there's a change here in terms of them featuring bay windows. This coloured street scene elevation looking northwards from the southward southern boundary close to the bridleway. Shows the buildings would be constructed in red brown brick, red hanging tiles at the first floor, and also grey roof tiles, which is in keeping with the surrounding built form. So just got a list of the constraints here. As you can see, it's national landscape, an area of great landscape value and green belt, but I will say it is not grey belt. It is also within 400 metres and 5 kilometres of the Wilden Heath Special Protection Area, but does not require any mitigation because the development is for less than 20 dwellings net. You've also got there, move this. You've also got the site allocation in Local Plan Part 2. Can't quite see the whole full slide, unfortunately, but I will read out the last point. Okay, I think you can just see the ecologist's recommendation there, and then the final point is it's required that the development preserves the setting of the existing bridleway to the south of the site. So the application, again, is for affordable housing in the form of shared ownership, the provision of which has been independently tested through financial viability analysis and would help to address housing needs in Chiddingfold. The proposed development would not be an appropriate development within the Greenbelt because it is for limited affordable housing for local community needs and therefore would not be harmful either to its openness nor to the purpose of including land within the Greenbelt. The proposal would also further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of a national landscape by creating wildlife habitats, high quality new planting scheme with ecological value, thereby enhancing the biodiversity of the site, as well as providing access to nature through direct means to the existing bridleway. In terms of neighbouring amenity, the proposed dwellings would not cause an adverse impact on that, given the existing relationships in the vicinity between neighbouring properties. The proposed dwellings would provide a high standard of accommodation for future occupiers. It's worthy of note that the council's tree officer has no objections on arboricultural grounds subject to conditions. The ecological conditions recommended by Surrey Wildlife Trust have been included, as can be seen in a copy of my report. Although the proposed highways access is directly onto Coombe Lane and different from that which is stated in the site allocation, this is considered safer than providing access onto the bridleway, and the County Highways Authority are satisfied with this proposal subject to conditions. A plan showing the location of soakaways or other method of drainage is conditioned to address water runoff concerns, and an energy statement outlines how the proposed development would deliver a reduction in carbon emissions. The design choices made in relation to this proposal have been satisfactorily justified, resulting in a high quality development in keeping with the character and appearance of the local area. As such, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to a Section 106 agreement to secure the affordable housing mix and tenure and to retain the dwellings as affordable in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. We have 4 speakers. The first is Mr. Gethin Smith. You have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Hello, I live on Coombe Lane opposite the proposed development site. I represent 33 residents who live around the proposed site and who formally objected to the application last year. In the short time I have, it is my job to try and bring to life the very real impact this development in its current form will have for the people who live there. We are not opposed to a suitable development of this land, but we strongly oppose this application, which we believe is wholly inappropriate for this location. The area surrounding the site where I have lived for 25 years is undeniably rural and wooded. There are approximately 20 dispersed cottage-style dwellings dotted around the site, with gardens and generous spacing set back from the road, which overall do not dominate the landscape. Low hedgerows and trees mark boundaries between properties and along the road, and there is a general feeling of space. The proposal introduces an estate-style form of housing. The pattern and density and proximity to the road is totally out of character with anywhere along Coombe Lane. With a very high ridge height of 9.6 metres, the proposed cluster of 6 houses will completely dominate the landscape and the views from both Coombe and Prestwick Lane and stick out like a sore thumb. To compound this, the site is already, as you have heard, significantly elevated, particularly above Coombe Lane and the adjacent properties by several metres, which means the development will have the appearance of towers looming over the existing residences, blocking out light and removing any sense of privacy, given how close they are to existing properties. I would fundamentally question why these buildings need to be so tall, and I would ask anybody to ask that question. Over 3 metres taller than an average 2-storey dwelling and the surrounding properties. Please picture yourself heading north out of Chinningfold on Coombe Lane. And after about a half a mile after the settlement boundary, these buildings will rise up in front of you like skyscrapers. To compound this even further, the proposal is to cram 6 2- and 3-bedroom houses into a very tight space of 0.3 hectares. This is contrary to the neighbourhood plan, which allocated for 4 affordable rental homes on the site, including 1-bedroom properties. Just think for a moment about the difference in scale between the neighbourhood plan allocated and had imagined, indeed what the community had imagined, and versus what is being proposed. Finally, the planning officer's report states the proposal would enhance the natural beauty of the national landscape. This is completely illogical, as this proposal simply does not respect the rural landscape and green belts, and importantly, it does not match the style of local housing. To be clear and to summarise, the height, the density, scale, proximity to the road and pattern of the proposed development is completely inappropriate for the setting. It does not comply with the neighbourhood plan, which requires that the development of this land, as you just saw, is in keeping with the cottage style of neighbouring properties. In fact, this scheme is completely different from what the neighbourhood plan had envisaged. Abnormally tall, densely packed houses arranged in a estate-style layout next to the road simply is not in keeping with the low and dispersed cottage-style houses dotted around the site. Far from enhance the natural beauty of the area, it will wholesale degrade the rural and open setting, adversely impact existing residents and harm the national landscape. I would therefore like to respectfully request that the Planning Committee supports the residents in protecting the rural nature of the area and the parish by refusing this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Matt Smith. You two have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good evening, members. My name is Matt Smith from D&M Planning Limited. I'm a fully chartered member of the RCPI and I am the agent for this application. As you've heard, this application is recommended for approval subject to a legal agreement. Officers consider that the proposal conforms with the development plan and with national planning policies, and we would commend you to follow this recommendation. The application will deliver 6 100% affordable homes on a site allocated for such purpose within the Chiddingfold neighbourhood plan. The allocation of the site for such purpose has been through an examination, and the evidence base for such has been scrutinised and been found to be sound. The neighbourhood plan has been adopted by way of a referendum and forms part of the development plan. This forms the most up-to-date evidence base for the site. The development represents appropriate greenbelt development conforming with one of the exceptions set out within the NPPF at paragraph 154. This is the same conclusion reached by the inspector when they were examining the neighbourhood plan. The development has also been considered by both your officers and the Surrey Hills AONB officer to be of appropriate design and form within the Surrey Hills and the immediate vicinity. The proposal incorporates many of the local vernacular features at a balanced, viable and appropriate density. Indeed, as is set out in the committee report, it would in fact positively enhance the Surrey Hills when regard is given to the objectives as set out within the AONB management plan. Given the compliance with both of these constraints, it is becoming on the Council to engage with paragraph 11D of the NPPF and to apply the tilted balance. As is recognised within the committee report, the Council is woefully short of housing, woefully short of delivering a sufficient supply of homes, and when assessed against the 5-year housing need, the quoted delivery is 1.28 years' worth of supply. In addition to this, whilst difficult to demonstrate an exact figure, there is an even greater shortfall of affordable units. Both of these facts demonstrate the pressing need for additional housing and particularly additional affordable housing in locations considered to be sustainable by both your professional officers and during the examination of the neighbourhood plan. It is recognised and acknowledged that the 6 units do not meet the ideal mix sought by the Council's housing enabling team. Whilst this is the case, however, the applicant has provided a viability assessment to demonstrate that the ideal mix sought simply is not achievable without either increasing the number of units on the site, something which was pushed back upon during pre-application discussions, or through the provision of market housing on site. The viability report demonstrates that 6 shared ownership options, the long-term natures of which will be secured by virtue of the legal agreement, can be delivered. Furthermore, the applicant has expressions of interest from registered providers to take over the affordable options, demonstrating that this is a deliverable site that will positively contribute to the identified need. In addition to the delivery of 6 affordable units, the proposal makes benefits to the highway network with an extension of the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit to be agreed with County as part of the 278 works. The proposal will deliver a range of other benefits too, including but not limited to the realisation of the AONB management plan policy objectives, ecological enhancements, removal of invasive species, etc. We therefore respectfully request that members resolve to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation and to help deliver 6 much-needed affordable homes on this allocated site. We can see no justification as to why, when regard is given to the tilted balance, that the harms of the scheme should be demonstrably nor significantly outweighed by the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Mr. Tony Weiner. You two have 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Chiddingfold Parish Council strongly objects to the planning application as it is non-compliant with the May Chiddingfold Neighbourhood Plan and other policy documents. Our neighbourhood plan was adopted only 3.5 years ago following a lengthy consultation which resulted in a referendum with 91% in favour. The proposed development site is in a very sensitive area, being greenbelt and within the Surrey Hills National Landscape, and the understanding of the neighbourhood planning consultation was that this site will be used for small rental properties as they are urgently needed in the village, particularly for young people. Now, your housing officers proposed 2 shared ownership along with 4 social rent properties. However, this application is for 6 shared ownership, so it doesn't meet either your officers' requirements nor those supporting the neighbourhood plan. Housing officers are also concerned about the affordability of the proposed shared ownership scheme. We have 16 additional rental properties in the village by September, but your housing officers are clear that more rental properties are needed. That is, unaffordable shared ownership is not the answer to our housing problems. Now, contrary to HO6, the development does not reflect the character of the local environment, with 6 properties shoehorned into a small estate along with small gardens, definitely not in keeping with the openness of the area. The properties will dominate the Greenbelt vista as they are unusually high, being 9.6 metres, as we've heard from others, compared to a typical height of between 7 to 8 metres, which is also the height of new properties in another sensitive area in Chiddingfold. We fear that this will destroy the rural nature of the locality, contrary to HO6, which requires planners to protect the local landscape. In fact, policy HA7, which defines this site, requires the development to be in keeping with the cottage style of the adjoining properties, which a small estate obviously fails to achieve.
The neighbourhood design guide requires the density of new housing to be in keeping with the rural area, and your planning officers acknowledge that the site is non-compliant with HS7 on this point. Now, the privacy of one's home is important to well-being of the residents. It is unacceptable then that the development is actually designed to permit overlooking. And for example, one resident has measured the distance of the development on her property as only 8 metres. The planning officers state overlooking only happens during daylight hours, but quite frankly, this is exactly when people want privacy, especially during the lighter months. Policy BE1 specifies developers should protect the amenity of existing occupiers so that the development fails to comply with this as well. The concept of sustainable development has increased in recent years. This site, being out of the village with no footpath and on the national speed limit, is extremely dangerous for walking and cycling, and quite frankly, unsafe for children and adults alike. There are no local shops, children's playgrounds, bus or train services, so residents are forced to use vehicles to go anywhere, which is highly undesirable. We've heard about the attempts to lower the speed limit, but quite frankly, as we all know, even if speeds are reduced, people don't obey them. The fact that this particular developer's costs are far too high is insufficient to justify why they should be permitted to disregard the adopted policies in the neighbourhood plan and cause harm to the green belt. This development is very wrong. There are many other non-compliances, but in conclusion, Chillingfold villagers, as proponents of the neighbourhood plan for which they voted strongly in favour, have every expectation that the policies it contains should be followed, and therefore request that the proposed planning application is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker on this application is Councillor Dave Busby, who I believe is online. You too have 4 minutes, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the case officer for all of his work on this application and for his thorough report. When this site was allocated as part of the Chillingfold Neighbourhood Plan, I would suggest that the proposal in front of committee members this evening is far from what was envisaged. This site does not lend itself well to sustainable development and comes with a number of significant complications and sensitivities. It is outside of the settlement boundary, it is in the national landscape, and it is in the green belt. The site is located on a narrow, bendy, undulating rural lane, some half a kilometre from the settlement boundary, and theoretically a walk of approaching half an hour into the centre of the village. There are no pavements or street lighting, and no public transport passes the site. It is simply not possible to walk, or I would say even cycle unless very experienced, into the village without putting yourself in significant danger. And this would remain the case even if the speed limit was reduced to 30 miles per hour. I do welcome the proposal to reduce the speed limit, but also note with some concern that the report states that this is outside of the planning authority's remit and cannot be controlled by condition. The area is not served by main sewerage or surface water drainage, and Coombe Lane regularly floods during periods of heavy or even moderate rain. Access to the site is extremely problematic, and the proposed new entrance, which is contrary to that stipulated in the neighbourhood plan, would result in the removal of hedgerow, causing significant harm to the rural character of the lane and therefore the national landscape. The only reason such a challenging site made its way into the neighbourhood plan, and not without plenty of debate, was on the proviso that any development would be both small in scale and provide genuinely affordable homes for the village. For me, I'm afraid the suggested provision of 6 2- and 3-bed shared ownership properties, with not one available for social rent, falls short of this requirement. Waverley's Housing Enabling Team's recommendation for the site was for 4 homes for social rent and 2 for shared ownership, as well as a recommendation that 1-bed homes should be considered, with the neighbourhood plan stating that 40% of new affordable homes should be 1 bed. Given the high property values in the area, shared ownership homes are only an affordable option for a very limited number of people who still fall within the maximum household income level of up to £80,000 per annum. Furthermore, if these original homeowners were to staircase their share in the property, they will become less and less affordable to more and more potential future occupiers. In conclusion, I would just say that I do not want to be objecting to applications on allocated sites. However, just as applications that come forward on non-allocated sites have to be judged on their merits, so is the case here. Given the challenges and sensitivities of this site, my view is that development should only be considered if it can both deliver the genuinely affordable homes Chiddingfold needs, namely homes available for social rent, and be in keeping with its rural setting in the Greenbelt and the national landscape. And regrettably, I don't believe that to be the case here. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, the floor is yours. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I could vote for this on a number of reasons. I know Coombe Lane very well because the other end of Coombe Lane is actually in my ward, and I know how difficult it is. Coombe Lane is a terrible road to walk on. There are no pavements. You couldn't cycle them. And I don't think it's a very sustainable area for children. I think it's, although there's Barn Kids opposite, I can see on my map. I think this is out of keeping with what was suggested and agreed in the neighbourhood plan for Chiddingfold. Their remit was for 4 rental properties in a cottage style. This is nothing like that. This is 6 homes and very high. I don't really think this meets the criteria that the neighbourhood plan people were wishing for. So in that respect, I couldn't possibly vote for it. It's outside of settlement. It's in the Greenbelt. It's AONB. How many more things can we find here? It floods. The roads are really not acceptable for traffic. In my view, it shouldn't be allowed in this format. The format that the neighbourhood plan suggested, I think we could look at. Thank you.
Thank you. One other little gentle reminder, it is an allocated site. Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. I think this application to me exemplifies a problem that we will frequently encounter as we consider applications, and that is that we have competing obligations. On the one hand, we have an obligation to respect that it's Greenbelt, it's ONB, it's the neighbourhood requirements of the neighbourhood plan, which specify specifically the kind of development that they want. On the other hand, we also have an obligation to provide for additional housing. Now, in terms of the objections that have been raised, first of all, I want to once again thank the officer for very, very comprehensive responses to the written objections raised. That's been very helpful. So let's consider those. On the one hand, we have a series of obligations to the nature of the site itself, in that it's far from the centre of the town, it's in an awkward position, it's ANV, it's Greenbelt, but all of those objections also apply to the allocated sites in the neighbourhood plan. So what is the difference? I think we can dispense with those objections. That leaves us, I think, with the fundamental objection that it is out of keeping with the character of the area, and it departs in detail from what was proposed in the neighbourhood plan. Those are important, but in my view, it's more important that we simply provide allocated sites. So on balance, I would support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I note from the neighbourhood plan that it talks not about 4, but at least 4 in the neighbourhood plan on this site. The one thing that does concern me is the roof height, and looking at the plan of the proposed buildings, they seem to have a very steep roof. I'm always suspicious when you've got a large sort of roof space as to the next stage when sort of dormer windows will appear and a bedroom is put in the roof. And I'm not sure, I appreciate that the head height has to be 2.3 meters throughout, which would be on the top floor as well. But I'm not sure why, I'm no architect, but I don't really understand why the roof has to be so high rather than it being less high. And that would perhaps make it less dominant in the locality, particularly bearing in mind the height differences. And I would appreciate officers' comments as to why we have got the roof so high. I know they've taken out the chimneys. I think there were chimneys originally, which would have added extra height, but why are they so tall? Why is it necessary for them to be so tall? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Goodridge. So the initial proposal was for them to be at 9.6 meters high with eaves of 5 meters. I mean, on this site, the buildings are fairly well separated from each other and neighbouring dwellings. So there was no design rationale for bringing those heights down necessarily. I mean, the neighbourhood allocation refers to cottage style dwellings in the neighbourhood, but not all of them are cottage style. And I think your point about whether they need to be so high, permitted development rights are restricted in national landscapes as they are in conservation areas for dormer windows. So they can't just add these as a later addition down the line where this application to be granted. They would need to apply and any development rights for roof lights they would be removed by condition as well. So it's not an intention for additional accommodation to be in the roof. It's more that these are 2 to 3 bedroom dwellings that are meter mostly the unit types identified in the neighbourhood plan housing needs assessment.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Coburn?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I've been waving at you for some time. Well, we really are just between a rock and a hard place, aren't we here? We sit here with circumstances that we don't want. As one of the speakers pointed out, an inspector looked at this site, knowing it was in the Greenbelt, and accepted it as a housing allocation. We can't suddenly turn around and say, oh, it can't be a housing allocation, it's in the Greenbelt, it's in the wrong place. It is a housing allocation, but it was presented to an inspector who would not have passed the neighbourhood plan for referendum if he felt there was a problem. And they've come in under the exception F and paragraph 154 for something that has to be acceptable in strict terms like that. We don't have a 5-year housing land supply. It's as simple as that. And every single policy that we have is weakened by that very fact. The tilted balance does kick in straight away. And I just don't think we can turn this down. You could say that they're slightly too high. We know that housing associations don't have cash anymore, that we're having huge problems finding housing associations to deliver affordable housing. I remember we went to Waymeadow Close when they opened that. And I said to them, why are you doing a 1-bedroom flat? And they said, because we're told to with the housing mix, it's not our choice. And actually we prefer 2 bedrooms, this was, I can't remember which housing association it was, but those were in the heady days when they had money. And we could work with them for what we wanted. So, given that this is an allocation, given that, as Councillor Goodridge has just said, the allocation is for upwards of 4, minimum of 4, given that the inspector accepted this as being a site, that could be allocated, I just don't think we have really, I don't think we have an option. I think we have to go along with the officer's recommendation, despite having strong reservations about it.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers, so if that's the case, I'll read the recommendation that subject to conditions 1 to 21 and informatives 1 to 10 and the completion of a section 106 agreement, permission be granted. When the lights show, please vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is 11 in favour, no abstentions and 1 against.
Thank you. So that is carried. Our next application, thank you, Russell. Our next application is WA 2024-00511, land at Woodland Ridge, High Lane, Hazelmere. And this is for the erection of a detached dwelling with access and associated works as amended. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. So let's get the PowerPoint on. Good evening. So this application at Woodland Ridge, High Lane, Hazelmere is for a single detached dwelling in a chalet bungalow style in the rear garden or side garden land at Woodland Ridge. Sorry. Okay. Okay, apologies for that. So yes, the application's for a detached dwelling, chalet bungalow style at land at Woodland Ridge in High Lane, which is within the settlement area about a mile to the west of Hazelmere town centre. The site is, I'll just switch down to the plan, sorry. So yeah, this shows the location and also a layout plan of the building that proposed, surrounded by single and two-storey houses, and we've got the Greensands Way running just along the northern boundary. The proposal is to take access from a shared access lane that serves 4 other properties. Just to note that the site sits a little higher than the neighbouring dwellings on the southeastern side of the lane, and the height of the dwelling would be approximately 1 metre higher than the existing bungalow at the site. So an aerial view here which shows the garden land indicated with the blue arrow. This photograph shows the access lane up to the site. The site is just around the corner of the bend there, and land on the right-hand side of that bend. This photo shows the existing bungalow, and it's taken from the site of the proposed dwelling. And then this view is across side of the proposed dwelling and towards Lanreath, which is one of the dwellings on the other side of the access lane. As I said, it's a two-storey chalet-style bungalow. It was originally submitted as 4 bedrooms, but it's actually been reduced to 3 bedrooms, partly to address headroom issues in some of those rooms, which one of the councillors mentioned earlier. And this is a street scene, if you would, of the existing and proposed dwelling. There is a planning history to the site, but it is quite dated. The previous refusals, and they don't have a great deal of bearing, I believe, on the acceptability of this house, having been considered under a previous planning framework. Just going back to the site plans, sorry, I've gone too far up there. The building does comply with car parking requirements and with amenity space, and there's also retained amenity space for the existing dwelling, which meets our standards. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one speaker, but before we have the one speaker, who's Lorraine Robinson, I must remind, and you've moved to the back, I must remind all members that we must be in this room and we must attend to every word of every presentation and every representation. And what's more, we must be seen to do so. So I call now for Lorraine Robinson. You have 4 minutes.
Very much. My name's Lorraine Robinson, and I'm here to provide a statement in support of this application for the detached dwelling within the existing residential curtilage of the property known as Woodland Ridge. The site sits within a private residential cul-de-sac of similar detached chalet bungalows, as well as a single-storey and some 2-storey dwellings as well. Permission was previously granted for a similar infill development in the lane, and that property now sits comfortably within its surroundings. The potential suitability of the site for residential development has long been recognised, with 2 previous applications submitted in 1996. Those applications were unsuccessful, largely due to restrictive policy BE6 on low density residential areas rather than any particular site limitations. This historic policy has since been removed and has not been replaced in Waverley's current local plan. And since the application was submitted, the National Planning Policy Framework has also been updated, and this recognises the important contribution small sites can make to local housing provision. Local planning authorities are directed to, and I quote, support the development of windfall sites through their policies and decisions, giving great weight to the benefits of using suitable sites within existing settlements. The proposed development site is isolated from existing properties and does not share any boundary with any other residential dwelling apart from that of the donor site. The proposal seeks to embed the new dwelling within the street scene with additional planting along the footpath boundary to the north and donor dwelling to the south, to mitigate any visual impact and increase biodiversity. Local objection to windfall site development is not unusual, but objective consideration of the proposals has been given by statutory consultees, including Surrey County Council Highways, Hazelmere Town Council, and tree and ecology professionals who have not raised objections. Any recommendations may be secured by the use of conditions should permission be granted. The proposal seeks to provide an attractive family home with adequate amenity space in keeping with its surroundings and in a highly sustainable location within the settlement boundary of Hazelmere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, over to you. Councillor Weldon. Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Weldon. You too have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I necessarily want to speak for or against the application, but I do have a couple of questions. The first one is that there are letters of objection from neighbours. The officer's report doesn't really address those. When this first came up, I had a request from a neighbour to come and see the site. This is the neighbour on the property to the northwest of the proposal. He was concerned that the development would be overlooking directly, not over into his house, but specifically into his bedroom. It's not entirely clear, although I think...
I'm very sorry, Councillor Weldon. As a speaker, you can speak but not ask questions. Do you still wish to be a speaker?
No?
No.
That,
Okay, members? Councillor Coburn.
Well, this is only here because there's an employee of Waverley Borough Council. It's not an application we would normally even look at. So I really don't think we need to waste too much time on it. You see a long line of no objections. Yes, there were some objections, but it's in terms of policy, it fits in with everything we're trying to achieve. And so I don't think there's any problem. And just for the record, playing with my iPad, I was getting policy 8J7, the Chiddingfold Neighbourhood Plan, and you can have a look if you think I was playing bingo or something instead of paying attention to the application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. So our recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 to 12 and informative permission be granted. When lights show, please vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So that is carried. We're just going to have one very short break. So if everybody could just 5 minutes break. Okay, everybody, we're going to restart. And our next application is WA 2024-00614 Westland Farm, Lords Hill Common, Guildford. This is for the extension to existing riding arena and erection of a viewing barn with associated works. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. So this is application for an extension to an existing riding arena. Looking at the location plan here, the riding arena is part of the Elysian School, which I've sort of talked about extensively in the report. Provides important services, special needs education in the borough. There's an existing riding arena, which we'll see in a moment, an aerial photograph in the southern part of the red line, excluding the access, and then it would be extended north. Just in terms of the planning history of the area, I think this is relevant, and I've just given a quick overview here of that. The original permission for the use of the Elysian School in 2016 is the area shown in blue, and that includes the riding arena. So there's a barn close to the access lane there, which is also a public footpath, and that includes a riding arena in the northern part. That would be extended by this application, 2024-00614 northwards, as I've said. Other applications that are relevant are not so much to this, but to both applications, the extension of the change of use to part equestrian, part agricultural, which is outlined in green in 2017, and then the two buildings which are subject of item 5. So moving to an aerial view, so showing the existing riding arena clearly visible as the black rectangle indicated by one blue arrow, and then to the north of that, the other blue arrow is indicating the area which would be used for the extension and the viewing barn. On the left, we've got the existing plan showing the existing riding arena, and then to the right, the extension in blue, and the dark blue would be the viewing barn. We have elevation drawings here showing the structure, so timber with a glazed front, used primarily for viewing, for other uses in association with the school as well. Sorry, just getting to some site photos. So this is a view taken from the area into which the viewing barn, into which the arena would be extended. There's an existing hedge there which would be removed, and then just views around to the northwest from approximately the area where the viewing barn would be located to the north and to the northeast. So, yeah, we fully recognise the good work the school is doing. However, this does extend significantly into the green belt and also into the AGLV and the emerging national landscape as it is at the present time. In terms of the policy background, policy RE2 of the local plan protects the green belt, and in paragraph 154 of the NPPF, there is provision for appropriate facilities for outdoor recreation and sport, which this could potentially come under. However, that's subject to the facilities preserving the openness of the green belt and not conflicting with the purposes of including land within it. And those purposes include avoiding encroachment of development into the open countryside. The recommendation is recommended for refusal on the basis of greenbelt impact, and there's also a recommendation for refusal on the basis that although a ecology assessment was provided, the Surrey Wildlife Trust comments were that they should come back and conduct a ground level survey just to ensure that there were no roosting bats within the area of vegetation that would be removed. I'll wrap up there, and yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We have speakers. We have the first one, Peter Rainier. You have 4 minutes from when you start.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Peter Rainier, Director of Planning at DMH Stallard. I speak on behalf of the owner of a neighbouring property, Westland Farm Cottage. As you know, the application site comprises an open field and hedge located directly north of the existing arena, which is part of a mixed-use site, which includes the therapy and learning for special needs education. My client has no objection to the work undertaken by the school. However, this application, and indeed planning more widely, is not so much about the laudable work undertaken, but rather about planning policies and the visual and amenity impacts which would result. Access is provided by a lane to the south, which is also the route of a footpath, and this route passes very close to my client's home. It is the only access point to the site suitable only for low volumes of traffic with no passing places. I think there are 4 key considerations. The first is Greenbelt. Your policy, RE2 of the local plan and the NPPF outline that Greenbelt will continue to be protected from inappropriate development. You're required to give substantial weight to any harm which might arise to the Greenbelt, including harm to its openness by inappropriate development. And inappropriate development will not be permitted unless very special circumstances can be demonstrated. The proposal would result in clear harm to the Greenbelt purposes, and the applicant has failed to establish a very special circumstances case for these additional facilities. Secondly, landscape impacts. Again, your policy RE3 sets out that the development must respect and, where appropriate, enhance the character of the landscape within which it's located. And the NPPF para 189 advises that great weight should be given to conserving and enhancing landscape and scenic beauty in national landscapes, which have the highest protection. The proposed development would fail the policy requirements. Put simply, it would not enhance the character of the landscape. The riding arena would result in a significant new area of hard standing, while the viewing barn would constitute an extension to the cluster of existing buildings at this location. As such, the proposed development would result in a significant encroachment of development into the countryside, and consequently the proposal would cause harm to the national landscape and the AGLV. Thirdly, traffic and amenity impacts. DM5 requires development to avoid harm to amenity of existing dwellings. No information has been provided within the application regarding intensification of use at the site, but the only reasonable conclusion is that it would increase the use and therefore traffic. The combination of activities across the wider site has resulted in increased vehicular and pedestrian activity, which has significantly and an unacceptable impact on amenities of my client's home. This scheme would only exacerbate that. The single private track is not suitable for increased vehicle numbers. No passing places are available. My client's driveway is being used for vehicles to pull in and turn as they navigate the increasing traffic along the track, leading to noise, disturbance and inconvenience. It's considered the formation of the viewing barn will significantly increase comings and goings as parents and other spectators are more likely to attend events, worsening the issues set out above. The desire for the viewing barn clearly highlights the expansion of the use which is sought without clear justification in this location. I trust, therefore, that you will support your officer's recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Mr. Matt Smith.
Good evening again, members. As I said earlier, my name is Matt Smith, a fully chartered member of the RTPI. I'm the agent for both this application and the one following, both concerning the special educational needs providers, Elysian. Last week, I sent each member of the committee a very detailed email setting out significant concerns we have with the officer's recommendation in this case. Put simply, we think your officers have got this wrong and that both applications should be approved without any further delay. Elysian is a registered provider of alternative and special educational need learning and therapy. The school specialises in equine and animal therapy, delivering education, respite and therapy to young persons and their families. The vast majority of their intake is from referrals directly by Surrey County Council as part of the commitment to delivering suitable school places to children with special educational needs. Your officers are asking you to refuse this application for 3 reasons and the following item for 2, both of which are identical. These recommendations demonstrate both a lack of consistency in decision-making alongside misinformation and misunderstanding of consultation responses. I detailed these extensively within my letter of last week. More pressingly, however, the recommendation demonstrates a lack of understanding of the serious need for SEN provision within Waverley and within Surrey and the exceptional work that Elysian does in supporting such. The MPPF sets out that great weight should be given to the need to create, expand or alter educational settings. This clear instruction, which is omitted from both committee reports, has in the past been sufficient to justify very special circumstances for other schools in Waverley within the Greenbelt. This weighting has allowed both state and private schools to provide new facilities, including sporting provisions, classrooms, school halls, playground equipment, etc., all treated as constituting very special circumstances. What's more is that those schools have been able to do so without the need for any strategy or master plan, yet for this special educational needs school, you are being asked to refuse so on such basis. This basis, which is unsupported by other decisions in the borough and is not explained at all within the officer's report. As it so happens, neither application will allow for the school to cater for new pupils or children, but would simply make that offering better. This is not even mentioning how on this application, we consider the scheme accords with the exception for outdoor sport and recreation set out in the MPPF. As set out in my letter of last week, despite the contents of the report, the site is not within the Surrey Hills National Landscape. It's something I've just checked on the DEFRA website. It is a candidate area for such, but until such time as this is signed off by the Secretary of State, it remains firmly outside. We therefore cannot fathom why the second reason for refusal has been included. Notwithstanding this, even if members do give consideration to weighting to such, we highlight that the officer reports negates to mention that schemes which conserve the landscape character are also deemed to be acceptable. The report only mentions enhancement. Both the second and first reason for refusal are copy and pasted across the 2 reports. With regard to the final reason for refusal on this application, I hope that you have read in detail the response from Surrey Wildlife Trust and the additional information which was provided in response to such. This additional information does not seem to have been sent on to the Surrey Wildlife Trust, but clearly rules out the need for additional surveys. Surrey Wildlife's comments were related to trees, not vegetation, and there are none to be removed as part of this application as shown by the Tree Protection Plan. There is simply no need for the additional survey sought. The officers do not seem to have recognised that nuanced response from Surrey Wildlife Trust. We therefore request that members take a common sense approach to this and the next scheme and overturn the officers' reasons for refusal. Not only should the schemes be supported for their ability to support special educational need provision, but they should be supported as neither conflicts with the development plan or national policy. We do not consider that the reasons for refusal stand up to scrutiny, and simply, we think your officers have this wrong and have misinformed you. A refusal now will inevitably result in the additional cost of the school at the expense of the educational provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have 2 ward councillors. We have Councillor Austin.
Thank you. I may be able to save both of us speaking. We'll wait and see. I might miss something. First of all, just to say, we place great weight on the social objectives of the school. I personally have had interactions with the work they do via my children, my friends' children, and I totally understand how important that is. But and I just would like to reinforce, I just reconfirm, this site is a candidate area. It's not national landscape at the moment. But what it is AGLV, and it is emerging national landscape land, and it is green belt. The site itself, we can see that on the plan there are a number of unauthorised buildings across the site, which may need regularising via planning at some point. But I think there are very real concerns about encroachment and creep further north into the green belt. And I have, over the period of the last few months, seen requests for from the officers for a business plan or master plan, just so that essentially the planning officer can understand the reasons for the intensification of the use here. And I haven't, I believe that that was rejected or not taken up, that offer to the planning officer. So it's really difficult actually, because I personally support the officer in saying that I can't see the evidence about the intensification of the use to justify it here. I also would like to just state the access to this site is really poor. It's via a single track lane, which gets very muddy, onto, again, an even smaller single track lane. So I do understand the concerns of the neighbour about being used as a turning circle. So, I mean, in summary, I think with regret, really, I must say, I support what the officer is saying in that they cannot demonstrate at the moment the very special circumstances which would overcome the intensification of use of this site and the encroachment into the greenbelt. I think I'll end with that for now. Thank you.
So, members, just in terms of the recommendation, I would like to make an amendment because the case officer has just confirmed to me that the land isn't actually in the Surrey Hills National Landscape, it is a candidate. So the recommendation is therefore just on the first reason for refusal, members.
The reason for refusal would be on the first reason and not the second.
Because the case officer has just confirmed that this is not in the AONB, it's a candidate, and therefore it doesn't have the full status at this stage.
Councillor Goodridge, did you want to?
Councillor Austin has spoke most eloquently, and I have nothing to add. You'll be glad to hear.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We started the evening with a lecture on looking at policy and not the applicant. And that is true of every single application as far as I'm concerned. Notwithstanding the good work that people do, we have policy, particularly green belt policy, which I've said before in this chamber, we have to support until we have a good reason not to. And we have given permission. And I'm afraid that there is creep here, and I do think that this is contrary to our green belt policy, RE2. I don't think, as Councillor Austin has said, that any very special circumstances have indeed been identified. So in sheer policy terms, you know, I still think this is contrary to our policy. And sadly, despite the good work of the school, I don't think anyone doubts that. I think in planning terms, this is not acceptable in the Greenbelt according to our own policies and the NPPF. Thank you.
Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. Yes, I would support what Councillor Coburn has just said. We must look at this in planning terms. And like others, I support what the applicant is doing, but that's not actually the point. I'm not persuaded by the officer's arguments on Greenbelt. We know that the framework has changed. We know there are circumstances where we may need to overlook that, and we need sometimes to build on Greenbelt, and also it is just an extension of an existing use. I'm not persuaded by that argument. However, I am really troubled by concerns about traffic and access. So on that basis, I would support the proposal to refuse. However, I would recommend to the applicant that they go away and come back with an amendment to take account of parking and traffic concerns.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No. So we have a recommendation that this be refused. When lights show, please vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is 8 in favour, 2 abstentions and 2 against. So therefore, the officer recommendation to refuse is carried.
Thank you. So we come to the next one, which is WA 2022-01987. The same. This is for retention of a log cabin as a classroom and use of a garage to provide an accessible toilet and medical room. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start actually by going back to the slide to show the history of the site, because it is relevant. So the application is for the retention of a log cabin and continued use of a converted garage as a medical room, both in association with the use of the school. So the two buildings indicated with the blue arrows, they're outlined in red on this plan. 2019-1763 was the application which granted temporary permission. And it was for, so the larger of the two rectangles includes a building which is a log cabin and was a temporary building. That was, and then the second one is actually a change of use of an existing garage to rooms in association with the school's use. The green outline below is for a building which was built to provide those same uses, and the temporary permission was given to cover the availability of a suitable place for those uses while that building was being built. So the intention was that the building to the north, the larger, would be removed and the other building would revert to its previous use. And there again, we have just the two buildings shown in outline. They're actually, they're not as big as the rectangles. It does include some land around them. This is the converted garage, and this is the log cabin to the north of the barn. Walking back down from the log cabin, you get a view back to, in the distance there at the end of the road, the building which was built for permanent use, and some buildings or some structures there, and then in this view you see the garage that was to be converted and has been converted, indicated by the blue arrow. The other buildings there are additional and don't have planning history as noted in the report. Just to go to elevation drawing. So this is the converted garage. The front of the building is different from what is shown there, but I don't think that has been any particular consequence. And then the log cabin is shown here. I've got some aerial photos here which just show the way that the site's developed. This is prior to the change of use. There is a garage indicated there, which by 2018 had been replaced with a larger garage, and there were a couple of additional buildings there. And then by the time the temporary buildings had been put on site, there were some additional buildings, and then the most recent view is actually from Google, and it shows some additional development there. The reason I'm showing those is simply really to say that it appeared from what I saw on my site visit that the the business plan that was submitted in, sorry, that's another drawing. The business plan that was submitted with the original application in 2016 doesn't appear to reflect the needs of the school now, and hence we asked for an update for that. But nonetheless, we're just looking at these two buildings. The retention of the converted garage that was there already, so it won't have any impact on the greenbelt openness. But the building to the north, the log cabin, will impact on the greenbelt openness, and reasons for refusal given, reasons for a temporary permission, I should say, on the temporary 3-year permission that was given for its siting there was simply that there was an impact on greenbelt and the AGLV that would affect the openness of the greenbelt if it was there permanently. So yeah, that is the key point I want to make, again, quoting the policies and section of the MPPF that I quoted with the earlier application. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we have Councillor Atkins, Councillor Austin, beg your pardon.
Thank you. I won't restate everything that we said in the previous application, but a lot of it still, the same thing stands. The Google Maps clearly show creep across the site, and I have not seen, I believe, very special circumstances or evidence of that in the form of a business plan or otherwise, which would demonstrate to me that those very special circumstances are overcome. So I support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
And I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? No speakers. So we have a recommendation that planning permission be refused. All those, please vote when lights come on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 7 in favour of refusal, 2 abstain and 3 against.
Thank you. So the refusal is carried. And our last application tonight is WA 2024-02-445 8 Beech Tree Drive. This is for replacement walls and a flat roof following removal of existing conservatory glazing, roof and parapet walls. Welcome, Matt.
Good evening, Madam Chair, ladies, gentlemen, members. I think this is the final application, so I'll try and streamline it as much as possible because it's quite a simple application and it's been a long evening. The application is in respect of number 8 Beech Tree Drive, Badchotley in Farnham. The application is for replacement walls, flat roof, following the removal of the existing conservatory glazing and roof and parapet walls. The application has been brought in front of the committee tonight purely because the applicant is a serving member of staff. And I'd like to note that no objections have been received in respect to the proposed development. Okay, the site location is within the developed area of Badshot Lee, surrounded by other similar dwellings. And this is the developed area of Badshot Lee with the application site towards the bottom left. The proposed and existing block plan shows the location of the extension, which is at the rear of the property. The hatched area shows the existing conservatory, but also the location of the proposed extension, which sits on the same footprint. A photograph of the front elevation of the property. This wouldn't be materially altered at all by the proposal, with the development being towards the rear of the property. There's a photo of the rear of the property with some annotations there, just pointing out the various details that would be changed under the proposals. And a plan of the rear elevation just showing the finished extension, with the roof being continued to the existing roof, the parapet walls being removed, and the conservatory structure being replaced with masonry and windows. Officers have assessed the impact upon residential amenity and have found no material harm by way of overbearing, loss of light or loss of privacy. So the main matters for consideration for the application are the scale and the design on the impact of visual amenity in the street scene and the character of the area, and the impact on residential amenity. Officers believe that the proposal would comply with the development plan, and as such, officers recommend approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coburn.
I'd like to speak for half an hour again. No, I mean, this is here again simply, you know, for because it's a member of staff, and it's perfectly acceptable, and it's an application we would not normally see. And I think it improves the bill, you know, and I think what they're going to do is going to improve the house. So, I mean, there's really no reason to refuse it on any grounds, as far as I can see.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. So the recommendation is that, subject to conditions 1 to 3, an informative permission be granted. When lights show, please vote.
And that is unanimous, Madam Chair.
That is unanimous and carried. And that, at before 9:10, is the end.